Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, where we take up important articles that have featured in the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper. The articles for the discussion are displayed on your screen.
Moving to the first article of the day that has appeared in the Hindu on page number 6, basically talks about the trade relations between India and United States of America. Now, the trade relations between India and USA was in news because of the visit of Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen last week to India. In this visit, she highlighted the renewed focus in the US on strengthening economic ties with the Asia's third largest economy and one of the America's indispensable partners, that is India. Now, this visit is particularly important also because this comes at a time when the global environment is weak with issues of macroeconomic, trade, and strategic challenges, making it more compelling for the two of the world's largest democracy to deepen their engagement in a way that is mutually beneficial for their own. Another important aspect that comes to highlight from the article is that the Ukrainian invasion and the assertion that Moscow had now weaponized the supply of natural gas to Europe, as well as the challenges of China's dominance in production of products such as solar panels. And therefore, in this visit, it was highlighted that United States of America is keen to nurture local partners in developing countries to help mitigate over-concentration on select suppliers. Now, discussing our article, we'll go a step further and try to discuss what are the issues that are concerning the trade relation with India and United States, and also try to understand what can be the suggested way forward. Now, before discussing the issues or the barriers to the trade between India and United States of America, we first need to understand the level and the depth of trade between United States of America and that of India. Now, the bilateral trade between United States of America and India stood at $119.42 billion in the year 2021-2022 as against to that of $80 billion in 2020-21. Now this highlights that there has been an increasing trend in the trade. Not only the trade has increased between the two countries, the exports and the imports have also increased. Now the Indian exports to the US has increased to a level of $76.11 billion in 2021, which was $51 billion in 2020. And also at the same time, imports also increased to $43 billion in 2021, which was $29 billion in 2020. This highlights that the trade is mutually beneficial for both the countries. America further is one of the few countries with which India has a trade surplus. Despite having the humongous trade amount, Indian and United States bilateral trade suffer from key issues. We'll discuss these issues in detail. First, we'll have a general understanding of the problem. Now, United States of America has termed India as the tariff king and raised the issues like heavy duties on American motorcycle, while the opposite for India. United States of America has even placed India priority watch list of USTR's special 301 list. Another issue which has been highlighted is related to subsidy issues over the renewable energy products and also issues related to that of agriculture subsidy. In the recent time, the United States of America has raised the visa fees and has also decreased the quota under H-1B, which has been impacting the Indian IT companies. And the next issue in line is over the domestic content requirement, where there was the issue or debate in the WTO regarding the domestic content requirement and the import duties which has been imposed on steel and aluminium. Further, United States of America also withdrew GSP for India, as this decision was pushed by the American dairy and medical industry, both of which have argued that India was not providing them reasonable and equitable access. While India, on the other hand, was claiming that it had taken adequate steps for the medical sector, and for the dairy sector, it highlighted the cultural concern. Though the Commerce Ministry at that time downplayed any sizable impact of the withdrawal of GSP, but it impacted a trade of $5.6 billion between India and America. Commerce Ministry at that time also highlighted the fact that the United States exports to India has been consistently rising with a speed of 30% overall growth. Now, we will step by step discuss the various areas which have been a cause of concern or contention between the two countries related to trade. The first such area of problem is due to deficits and tariff. Now the basic underlining of the problem between India and America for all the trade related problems has been attributed to the transactional approach that has been followed by United States of America while dealing with India. The first problem here is of deficits and tariffs. These deficits and tariffs were earlier not a concern of United States of America, but now it is the major problem for America in the recent year, as the deficits have continually increased and the recent deficit between India and America was close to $32 billion in the year 2021-2022. And this deficit is in favor of India, which America has attributed is due to the high tariffs that are imposed by India on its products. Another cause of contention between India and America is that of service. India has high pool of skilled workers and India is extremely competitive in the field of services. However, barriers to the US firms' market access, including India's limit on foreign ownership and local presence requirement, also contributes to the factor that the services sector is not utilized to the optimal level. The United States concern here include recent restrictions that India has placed or introduced on e-commerce platforms. India limits the FDI in the sectors such as insurance and banking, and this has been repeatedly highlighted by the United States of America. On the other hand, the key issue from the Indian perspective include the temporary visa policies of United States of America, fees of worker visa, etc. India is thus seeking a totalization agreement with the United States of America to coordinate social security protection for workers who split their career between the two countries. For this, India in the year 2016 also filed a case at the WTO level over visa fees, arguing that the higher fees raise the overall barriers for services suppliers from India. The third area of concern between India and that of United States of America, as already discussed in the brief, is related to visas, as United States of America guarantees H-1B visas and L-1 visa that only permits highly skilled workers from other countries to be employed. And India has been pushing for the Social Security Totalization Agreement, which we have already discussed. The conclusion of Totalization Agreement between India and USA would allow Indian citizens to repatriate their Social Security savings once they come back to India. Another cause of contention between India and United States bilateral trade is that due to IPR protection. Now, both sides, that is the USA and India, differs on how to balance IPR protection to incentivize innovation and support other policy goals. Now, the contention here is regarding the access to medicines, as India has remained on US concerns such as India's treatment of patents, trade secret protection, infringement rate, for which the big pharma companies of United States of America has been pushing pressure on their government. Two particular cause of concern for the United States companies here is Section 3D of the Indian Patent Act, which stops evergreening of patents. For example, this was exercised the American firm of Novartis, which lost the battle for Gleevec. And another section which has been highlighted is Section 84 of the Indian Patents Act, which allows for compulsory licensing after 3 years if reasonable requirement, overpriced and not in commercial quantities. And this was the case with sorafenib vis-a-vis Nexavar. Further, Form 27, which is unique to India and the statutory requirement where the patent holder needs to explain how he is exercising the monopoly in the market, is another cause of concern and contention between United States and that of India. The next bone of contention between India and USA is related to agriculture. Now India has been demanding enhanced market access for its agriculture produce in the US market, and India has also opposed the phytosanitary standards that have been imposed by USA to curb imports from India. India particularly wants restoration of market access for wild caught shrimp and water buffalo meat. US, on the other hand, wants to export excess ethanol for India's ethanol blending with petrol. Moving on to the next set of challenges between the India and the US trade is some of the new issues that have crept in recently. US has been pressing for the issues such as child labor and that of forced labor in the global supply chain. India does not want to tackle these issues in the framework of trade agreements and trade talks. US has been pressing on to bring in environmental issues also in the framework of trade talks, which has been opposed by the India. And also, India highlights that standards and conformity assessment procedures are often used for trade respective practices with respect to India. Now, the next set of challenge which is present between India and US is the misunderstanding of self-reliance, or what we popularly known as Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative of India. The Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative has exacerbated the view that India is increasingly becoming a protectionist and a closed economy. Further, some of the differences between India and USA are not direct consequences of India-US relationship, but due to the US hostility towards third countries like that of Iran or that of Russia, who have been traditional allies of India. US has also criticized India's data localization policy and calling it as the most discriminatory and trade distortive. The USTR 2019 National Trade Estimate Report on Foreign Trade noted that India has recently promulgated a number of data localization requirements that would serve as significant barriers to digital trade between United States of America and that of India, and has also concluded that these measures have severely hiked the cost of American companies that are operating in India. Now that we have discussed all the challenges that are present to India-US bilateral trade, we need to understand what are the way forward and the solutions that have been recommended. What can be the guiding force such that these issues can be ironed out? The first set of solution offering here is to overcome the problem of over-analysis. Now India and US share an interesting relationship where every sign that is emanating from United States of America is overanalyzed. But at the same time, it can be concluded that India's relation with USA have matured enough such that to propel the relationship on a positive direction, which are in alliance with the geostrategic and geopolitical realities of the day. India further is not in a tit-for-tat approach with United States of America like that of China, because it has a strategic relationship with the country. India and United States share common vision regarding the world and thus cannot bear to antagonize each other. Some steps in this regard are of considerable importance that have been taken. United States of America recently granted special trade authorization status to India. This is seen as a development which is beneficial for India. As a way forward, India should negotiate a trade package with United States of America which is on similar lines as United States of America has already entered with countries like Argentina, Brazil and that of South Korea. India at the same time domestically needs to boost export and cut on the non-essential imports from United States of America. India also should focus that the trade issue and the challenges between the United States of America and China presents a sweet spot to India, which it can become the largest beneficiary of business deals. India at the same time should convince United States of America that it is benefited from the IT trade as the US tech giants are most profitable, and also India is able to provide job opportunities to native US population by establishing their bases there. India's ties with the US in the strategic realm, particularly the defense trade and force interoperability, are now at an all-time high. And India has also become one of the top 10 trading partner with United States of America, which means that the US Indian trade is now greater than that of United States of America and France, and thus this trade has to be developed further. Further, the geopolitical realities of the world are also forcing the two countries to drive even closer as Russian increased alignment with China as a result of the Ukrainian crisis has complicated India's ability to rely on Russia as it balances China. Hence, continuing cooperation in security as well as deepening of the trade relations between India and United States of America will be beneficial for both the countries. Lastly, it can be also mentioned here that United States of America and India have no trade agreement till now, and a free trade agreement between India and United States of America is the next frontier in the Indo-US relationship. The above mentioned issues need to be ironed out and both the countries need to find a common ground such that the strategic partnership can be much better realized between the two countries and they become the natural allies for each other. Moving on to the next article of the day that has featured on page 1 of the Hindu talks about India's initiative at the COP27. Now the article is in news because the climate summit in Egypt has entered its final week, but the news reports indicate that the progress at the summit has been less than satisfactory, as there has been no agreement reached yet on the loss and damage fund to help the vulnerable countries to cope with the damage caused by the floods, droughts, and other climate events. Apart from this, India has also announced its long-term strategy at COP27, which will help the nation to become carbon neutral by 2070, a commitment made by Prime Minister at the Glasgow summit last year. Apart from this, the country also aims to become an international hub for producing green hydrogen and increasing the proportion of ethanol in petrol. Now, under this article, we will dissect various aspects of climate change and how it is impacting the water system. We'll try to understand the concepts related to green hydrogen, that is, what is green hydrogen, hydrogen as an energy resource, India's strategy for hydrogen, the benefits of using hydrogen, and also we'll discuss the challenges in this regard. This area is important because UPSC in the syllabus under the GS1 has specifically mentioned changes in critical geographical features including water bodies and the ice caps, and also under the GS3 section has mentioned conservation, environmental pollution, degradation, and environmental impact assessment as a part of it. So thus this region becomes important for us. We'll first try to understand the impact of climate change on the water system of the world. This diagram highlights the sea level variations. From the diagram, it can be concluded that the mean sea level has been rising since the past 2 decades. Moving to the next infographic, which represents the warming of the oceans. Now, we all know that the ocean does an excellent job of absorbing excess heat from the atmosphere. The top few meters of the ocean stores as much as heat as the Earth's entire atmosphere. So, as the planet warms, it is the ocean that gets the most amount of extra energy. And this we can also conclude from the diagram that starting from 1900, there has been a continuous increase in the ocean temperature. The next article here highlights the shrinking cryosphere. The shrinking cryosphere has direct relation with the shrinking of the ice sheets, and the Greenland and the Antarctic ice sheets have decreased in their mass over the years, and this can be concluded from the infographic. The next infographic highlights the impact of the climate change on the frost-free season. It concludes that the length of the frost-free season has been increasing since the 1980s. About the glacial retreat, it says that the glaciers are retreating everywhere around the world, starting from the Alps to Himalayas, Alaska, etc. And at the same time, it can also be concluded that there is a decreased snow cover, as satellite observations reveal that the amount of spring snow cover in the northern hemisphere has decreased over the last 5 decades, and thus that the snow is melting earlier than predicted. The last infographic highlights the issue of ocean acidification. Now the diagram is itself self-explanatory, and highlights that since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the acidity of the surface ocean waters has increased by almost 30%. The increase in the result of human emitting more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and hence more is being absorbed by ocean. The amount of carbon dioxide absorbed by the upper layer of oceans is increasing by approximately 2 billion tons per year. Now that we have understood the impact of climate change on the world and the ocean, we'll try to understand the role of green hydrogen and the various dimensions that are associated with it. Now, hydrogen and ammonia are expected to replace fossil fuels in the near future. One of the primary criteria of nations' ecological sustainable energy is the production of these fuels using renewable energy, and these fuels are known as green hydrogen and green ammonia. The Indian government in this regard is also taking a number of steps to make the transition from fossil fuels and fossil fuel based feedstocks to green hydrogen and green ammonia easier. And in this regard, the green hydrogen policy has been announced by the government, which incentivizes producers of this form of power. According to the International Renewable Energy Agency, hydrogen will make up 12% of the energy mix by 2050. The agency, in its World Energy Transition Outlook report, suggested that about 66% of this hydrogen must come from water instead of natural gas. Now, green hydrogen is seen as a driving source to power our industries and light our homes with the zero emissions of carbon dioxide. So, it is important here to understand how hydrogen flares as an energy-rich resource. Hydrogen is the most abundant element on the planet, but it is not found in the pure form which is required to be used as fuel. Hydrogen also has high energy density, which is almost 3 times that of diesel, and hydrogen even has the potential to be the key renewable target in supporting infrastructure as well. Green hydrogen can act as an energy storage option, which would be essential to meet the intermittencies of renewable energy in the future. India is placed well for hydrogen energy because of its ideal geographical circumstances and abundance of natural ingredients. Thus, the administration has pushed for the expansion of gas pipeline infrastructure across the nation, as well as modification of the electrical grid, including the implementation of smart grids. This is done to efficiently incorporate renewable energy into the current energy mix. Producing green hydrogen in India can become the cost competitive with the addition of capacity to renewable energy production, storage and its transmission, thus progressively moving towards the ideals of self-sufficiency. We will first try to analyze the types of hydrogen. The production techniques of energy carrier vary depending on its application, and thus they are depicted with different colors such as black, brown, grey, blue and green hydrogen. Now, grey hydrogen is produced from natural gas where the associated emissions are released to the air. Blue hydrogen, on the other hand, is produced from the natural gas where the emissions are captured using carbon capture and storage. Green hydrogen is a zero carbon fuel which is made by electrolysis using renewable power from wind and solar to split the water into hydrogen and oxygen. This green hydrogen can be further utilized for the generation of power. Thus, it is very important in achieving the target of net zero emission. But currently, less than 1% of hydrogen produced is green hydrogen. Black hydrogen, on the other hand, is produced by the use of fossil fuel, whereas pink hydrogen is produced through electrolysis but using energy from nuclear power resources. Brown hydrogen is produced by using coal, where the emissions are again released into the air. Thus, these were the different types of hydrogen that are being produced and used worldwide. Turquoise hydrogen is also an emerging decarbonization option. Thus, these are the different types of hydrogen that have been produced around the world. Now, we'll try to understand what are the benefits of using green hydrogen for India. The first benefit here is the catering of high energy demand. As India is the world's 4th largest energy consuming country, that is, it is behind China, United States and European Union. And according to the forecast done by International Energy Agency, India will overtake European Union to become the world's 3rd largest energy consumer by the year 2030. And thus, to cater this high energy demand, the green hydrogen is particularly important. It will also help in transition to clean energy, as green hydrogen can drive India's transition to clean energy, combat climate change, and also under the Paris Agreement, India has pledged to reduce the emission intensity of its economy by 33 to 35% by 2030, and this can be done with the efficient transition using green hydrogen. Further, it will also help in indigenization of technology, as the localization of electrolyzer production and the development of green hydrogen projects can create a new green technologies market in India. Another benefit of using green hydrogen will be the reduction. It will be the reduction in the import dependence, as India will no longer be dependent for the fossil fuels which it currently imports from various countries. And it was in this regard, under the Union Budget of 2021-22, National Hydrogen Energy Mission was announced that will draw up a roadmap for using hydrogen as an energy resource. However, there are certain challenges that are also associated with the production of green hydrogen. These challenges can be clubbed into three boxes, that is technology, cost, and manufacturing. Though hydrogen is a rich source of energy, there is a challenge to compress and to liquefy, as it needs to be kept at a stable minus 253 degrees centigrade, that is far below the temperature of minus 163 degree at which the liquefied natural gas currently is stored, and making its use cost very high. Another issue here is the cost involved. The production cost of green hydrogen has been considered as a prime obstacle, as the researches conducted by the International Renewable Energy Agency indicates that the cost of production is predicted to be around $1.5 per kg by 2030. But this can only be done if several conservative measures are also implemented simultaneously. Another huge challenge in the production is that of manufacturing. The manufacturing and development of electrolyzers will have to increase at unprecedented rate by 2050 from current capacity of 0.3 gigawatts to that of almost 5,000 gigawatts. For the transportation of fuel cell, hydrogen must be cost competitive with the conventional fuels and technologies on per mile basis. Fuel cells which convert hydrogen fuel to usable energy for cars are still expensive, and the hydrogen station infrastructure needed to refuel hydrogen fuel cars is still widely underdeveloped. Further, the commercial usage of hydrogen as a fuel in industries necessitates a massive investment in R&D and infrastructure for hydrogen production, storage, transportation, and demand development. Thus, these were the challenges that the country currently faces with regard to the exploration and development of hydrogen sector. Now, we'll try to look at the policies that India is adopted for this. The Ministry of Power has notified green hydrogen and green ammonia policy. The policy is set to boost domestic production of green hydrogen, as any new renewable energy facilities built to produce power of green hydrogen generation will receive 25 years of free power transmission under the new policy. This means a green hydrogen producer in Rajasthan may build a solar plant to send renewable energy to a green hydrogen plant in Assam without having to pay any interstate transmission fees. This move is likely to make it more economical for key users of hydrogen and ammonia, such as the oil refining, fertilizers, steel sector, to produce green hydrogen for their own use. These sectors currently employ grey hydrogen or grey ammonia. Further, under the same scheme, there are various incentives that have been provided. The government plans to create a single gateway for all green hydrogen production clearances, as well as mechanisms for the producers to bank any excess renewable energy created with discoms. The requirement of time-bound clearance of project would also spur investment, while the grid connectivity on priority will ease the operational processes. The Power Ministry has also said that the energy plants set up to produce green hydrogen or ammonia would be given connectivity to the grid on a priority basis. Further, the power distribution companies may also procure renewable energy to supply to green hydrogen producers, which will be done at a concessional rate. The procurement made by the power distribution companies would also count towards states' renewable purchase obligation under which it is required to procure a certain proportion of its requirement from renewable energy resources. Further, under the same policy, the port authorities will also provide land at applicable charges to green hydrogen and green ammonia producers to set up bunkers near ports for storage prior to the export. And it is being concluded that Germany and Japan could be the key markets for green hydrogen that is produced in India. So with the various initiatives lined up by the Indian government, it is clear that the green hydrogen is the way to go, as the world is presently experimenting the dawning of hydrogen energy in all the sectors that includes energy production, storage, distribution, cooling of buildings, household, as well as to serve the industry requirement. Energy efficiency and sustainability are two important factors that are driving the transition from present fossil fuel based economy to a circular economy, that is a renewable circular sustainable fuel utilization cycle that will characterize the highly efficient engineering and the energy technological choices. Moving on to the last article of the day that has featured on the page 1 of the Hindu, basically talks about the observations made by the Supreme Court with regard to the conversion. Supreme Court in the Ashwini Kumar Upadhyay versus Union of India took serious note of the forced religious conversion through deception, allurement or by force, and has held that there is a freedom of religion but not of forced conversion under the Indian Constitution. The court has also asked the centre to make its stand clear on forceful conversion and also to file its response in the same matter. Now this topic is important from the UPSC perspective, as the syllabus under GS2 provides for the various government policies and interventions and also the welfare schemes that have been introduced in this regard for the vulnerable section of the population by centre and the state government. Now this area also can be included under the GS1 section, as it is primarily an issue of social importance and affects the secularism. We'll try to understand this topic in detail, wherein we'll try to understand what were the observations made by the Supreme Court. We'll also see what are the socio-economic situation which forces religious conversion, what are the constitutional provisions that have been mentioned regarding the same. Further, we'll also take our discussion a step further to discuss over the issue of propagation and that of conversion. And also at last, we'll see the anti-conversion laws that are passed and what are the challenges associated with them. So Supreme Court made an important observation in the similar case and said that the Constitution though allows freedom of religion but not of forced religious conversions, which they termed as very dangerous, and said that it may affect the security of the nation and freedom of religion and conscience of the citizens. Further, the court asked the Union government to highlight the steps which it intends to take to curb forced religious conversion by allurement or through fraudulent means. Now, the Constitution has also provided guidelines under Article 25. Article 25 provides for freedom of conscience and free profession, practice and propagation of religion. Under the same article, it is mentioned that all the persons are equally entitled to freedom of conscience and the right to freely profess, practice and propagate religion. But at the same time, the restrictions have also been imposed under Article 25, as state can regulate such practices on the grounds of public order, morality and health. Further, under the Article 25, Clause 2, Subclause A, it says that state can regulate or restrict any economic, financial, political or other secular activity which may be associated with religious practice. So this brings us to the discussion, what are the socio-economic forces that are driving these religious conversions that was observed in the case? The poor socio-economic situation of people from the deprived section such as scheduled caste, scheduled tribe or other tribal communities are often lured into forceful conversion to different religion by offering certain incentives. The petitioners in the case argued that every week such incidents of forced conversions are reported, where it is done by intimidation, threatening, deceiving, luring through gifts and monetary benefits, and also by using black magic and superstitions. Further, the petitioner further alleged that most of the victims of forced conversion come from socially and economically marginalized communities, and as such the practice offends not only the fundamental rights as enshrined in the Constitution, but other constitutional principles such as secularism as mentioned under the preamble. Solicitor General, while arguing on the behalf of the central government, stated that the issue was also debated in the Constituent Assembly, with conversion being referred to as propagate, and also highlighted that some states have come up with laws against forced conversion and Supreme Court has also upheld such laws. Now we'll try to understand various debates that occurred in the Constituent Assembly on propagation and its difference from conversion. Now the difference over the propagation and conversion came twice in the Constituent Assembly debates, first during 1947 and then in 1948. Conversion from one religion to another brought about by coercion or undue influence shall not be recognized by law. This provision was subject of debate as it was supposed to be placed under Chapter of Fundamental Right. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel withdrew the clause from the Fundamental Rights chapter and allowed citizens freedom of conscience and free proportion, practice and propagation of religion under the Fundamental Rights in 1947. Later, in 1948, the matter of forceful conversion was again raised, and it was argued that Islam has declared its hostility towards the Hindu thought, and Christianity has mastered the policy of peaceful penetration by the back door in India's social life. K. Munshi then at that time explained the importance of the term propagation and said that it was not fraught with the danger of Indian society as the term propagate was a fundamental part of Christianity and they did not intend to convert aggressively. He was supported in this thought by T. Krishnamachari, who had studied in the Christian institutions for some 14 years and spoke that no attempt had ever been made to convert him to Christian faith. At the same time, it was T. Krishnamachari who implored the House to consider the historical and the sociological context in which the Hindus had converted to Christianity. He argued that people embraced Christianity due to the manner in which Christian faith treated its people. By converting to Christianity, he said, the outcast among the Hindus could become equal in every manner and they were no longer treated as untouchables. Further, Krishnamachari made a final conciliatory pitch to the assembly to allow individuals to propagate their religion and to convert people if they felt that it is a thing that he has to do and this is a thing for which he has been born and this is his duty towards his God and his community. After the constitutional debates happened in 1947 and 48, and Article 25 provided for freedom of conscience and free profession, practice and propagation, the matter again came into notice and was challenged in the Supreme Court. In 1977, Supreme Court made a judgment in Father Stanilis versus State of Madhya Pradesh. Now two anti-conversion laws were made by the state of Madhya Pradesh and that of Odisha. And these two laws were challenged. The two laws were the Madhya Pradesh Dharma Swatantrata Adhiniyam 1968 and the Odisha Freedom of Religion Act 1967. Under these laws, it was required that a district magistrate should be informed each time a conversion was made and prohibited any conversion that was obtained through fraud or illegal inducement. Supreme Court in the same case upheld the two of the earliest anti-conversion statutes in India on the grounds of public order, and also opined in the same case that fundamental right to propagate religion does not include right to convert a person to other religion. So this has been the historical evolution of statute related to anti-conversion laws. Now in the year 2021, the Uttar Pradesh government passed a law which is known as the Uttar Pradesh Prohibition of Unlawful Conversion of Religion Act 2021, and we will see some of the major provisions that are provided under the Act. This legislation makes not only religious conversions that are forcefully obtained as an offense, but also declares void any conversion found to be made solely for marriage. Now another interesting change that have been brought in is the burden of proof as to whether religious conversion was effected through misrepresentation, force, undue influence, coercion, allurement or by marriage lies on the person who has caused the conversion. That means the burden of proof has been shifted on the accused. Further it says any aggrieved person his or her parents, brother, sister, or any other person who is related to him or her by blood, marriage, or adoption may lodge an FIR against such conversion. Reconversion to person's previous religion will not be illegal even if it is vitiated by fraud, force, allurement, misrepresentation, etc. Further, it has criminalized the offense as any person accused under the offense shall be punishable with imprisonment of 1 to 5 years and a fine of up to 15,000. It also says that if any person is involved in forceful conversion of minor, woman, or a person belonging to the scheduled caste or the scheduled tribe shall attract a punishment of imprisonment between 2 to 10 years and a fine of rupees 25,000. It further says a person who has been previously convicted for forceful conversion, if found guilty for a second time, will be punishable with the double punishment prescribed. And the marriages that have resulted out of forced conversion shall be declared as void by the family court. The offense is further made cognizable and non-bailable. It means that a police officer can arrest an accused without a warrant, and bail can only be granted by the court at their discretion and not by an officer. Now these anti-conversion laws are replicated by other states also, but there are certain issues and concerns with these anti-conversion laws that are passed in India. We'll see what are the various problems with the anti-conversion laws in India in detail. The first problem with the anti-conversion law in India is that state can now interfere in citizens' personal life. Otherwise, the state has been prohibited on the account of fundamental right, but now this has been reduced. Further, such anti-conversion laws would be violative of right to privacy judgment, which made right to privacy as an integral part of right to life and personal liberty. Further, right to privacy also includes sanctity of family life, marriage, procreation, home, and sexual orientation. It is being also argued that these anti-conversion laws result in violations of the constitution every time matters of intimate and personal choice are made vulnerable to paternal whims of the state. It further says the UP Act further reverses the idea of burden of proof, as every religious conversion is presumed illegal. Thus, the burden is on the person carrying out the conversion to prove that it is by their will and not illegal. It reverses the criminal jurisprudence regarding burden of proof also, as the burden of proof in the criminal cases is on prosecution, and a person who is presumed to be an accused of committing an offense is innocent until proven guilty stands violated. Further, it has a deeper connotation also, as freedom of conscience would mean nothing and take a back seat if every act of religious conversion is going to be presumed illegal unless proven otherwise. So these were the problems with the various anti-conversion laws that are passed by different states, and particularly that by Uttar Pradesh. With this, we have dealt with the various constitutional provisions, Supreme Court judgment, the anti-conversion acts that have been passed, and the problems that have been arising due to these anti-conversion laws. And in the very beginning, we have also discussed how socio-economic conditions lead to conversions in India.